Welcome to Dead and Roasted. What can I get you?
We attempted to put up a "We don't serve skinwalkers" sign here at the Dead and Roasted Cafe, but the trick is, you can never really tell who a skinwalker is, and by the time you followed them into the bathroom after figuring it out, well, there's not but the cutest little coyote staring at you while using the urinal. The darndest thing, really. Anyway, today I've got an assortment of scary skinwalker stories for you. These are tales from the break room. Remember, you can send me your scary work stories at eeriecast.com/submit, and you can follow and rate Tales from the Break Room on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to help us grow. Also, hurry and get my book, Creepy Campfire Stories, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your favorite bookstore. Or just go to creepycampfirestories.com. Thank you. Hospice of the Haunted, from Anne Newley. I work hospice, home hospice specifically, which means I drive out to people's houses to help them die comfortably. Been doing it 8 years now in rural New Mexico, Las Cruces, Truth or Consequences, all the little towns scattered between. You get used to death when you do this job. What happened last year, though, that was different. My territory covers about 2,000 square miles. Some patients I see daily, others weekly, depending on how close they are to the end. A particular ranch was one of my furthest stops, 90 minutes from the office, way out past Hatch. Home to one Mr. V. Mr. V was 89 years old, had lung cancer, maybe 2 months left when I started to see him in March. First visit was normal. A nice old man, still sharp mentally. His wife had passed away about 5 years back. His son lived in Albuquerque, came down weekends when he could. The house was typical for the area, with adobe walls, a tin roof, probably built in the 1940s. It sat on about 50 acres of scrubland. Nearest neighbor was 3 miles off. Mr. V kept dogs. 3 big mutts that would bark like crazy when I pulled up, then settle down once they recognized my car. That first day after I'd done my assessment and was packing things up, Mr. V grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but insistent. "The coyote," he said. "Just don't let the coyote in." I smiled and assured him I'd keep the doors closed. Coyotes were common out here. Sometimes they'd get bold, too, especially if they smelled easy food. He shook his head. "Not a regular coyote. It comes at night, tries the doors. It talks." Confusion was common with his type of cancer. I made a note in his chart and didn't think much of it. Second visit, a week after that. The dogs were going absolutely crazy when I arrived. Not their usual territorial barking. They sounded spooked. They were clustered by the front door with their hackles up, staring at the fence line. I looked where they were focused, and I saw something. A coyote, no doubt about it, sitting about 40 yards out. It was a mangy-looking thing, with patches of fur missing. It was too thin, but what struck me was how still it sat. It was sitting there, watching the house, not the dogs. When I got out of my car, it turned its head to look at me. Direct eye contact, too. Coyotes don't usually do that. They're skittish creatures, but this one stared. I hurried inside. Mr. V was having a bad day, more confused than before. Kept calling me Maria, which was his wife's name. But when I mentioned the coyote outside, he got lucid real fast. "How close?" he asked. "By the fence. The dogs seemed scared of it." He tried to sit up, but he fell back wheezing. "Don't go out alone. Wait for it to leave." But when I checked an hour later, it was still there. Same spot, same position. It did seem to be waiting. I ended up calling his son, who said he'd been seeing it too on his visits. Figured it was rabid. Said he'd bring his rifle next time and take care of it. That became the pattern. Every visit, I would see the coyote somewhere. Sometimes by the fence, sometimes closer. The dogs would stop barking at it after a while. Then they would just whine and press against the door. Other patients started mentioning things too. Mrs. C, who lived about 10 miles from the V's, asked if I'd seen her daughter outside. Her daughter lived in California, hadn't visited in months. She insisted someone who looked just like her had been at the bedroom window the night before, asking to come in. She didn't sound right, Mrs. C had said. Sounded like she had gravel in her throat. Thomas Y, another patient of mine, told me his brother kept visiting at night. His brother had been dead for years, 3 years in fact. He stands at the sliding door, Thomas said. Knocks real soft, says he's cold. You document everything in hospice. Pain levels, medication schedules, mental state. I started to add these incidents to my notes. There was a bit of a pattern to it. It would happen at night, always someone the patient loved, always wanting in. By April, Mr. V was declining fast. His son had installed cameras after the rifle didn't solve the coyote problem. Claims he shot it twice. Hit it once for sure, but it kept coming back. Wasn't sure how much I believed of that. Could have been a different coyote. Dad keeps trying to get out of bed at night, the son told me. He's saying Mom's at the door. I checked the cameras, didn't see anything. Well, that would be a lie if I left it at that. I did see a coyote skittering past the front door a few times. Was it the coyote? I'm not sure. 3 days later, I got a call at 11 p.m. Mr. V was actively dying. The son was panicked, asking me if I could come in. The drive out there at night was different. My headlights kept catching eyes along the road. Too many eyes, it felt like. More coyotes, I thought. I figured this whole series of events was just starting to get to me. When I finally pulled up to the house, every exterior light was on. The son met me at my car. Dad was right, he said. I've been hearing it. My mom's voice. Dad keeps trying to get to the door, but he's dying. Inside, Mr. V was agitated, trying to get out of bed despite barely having any strength left. He kept reaching toward the front of the house, mumbling in Spanish. I gave him medication to calm him, sat with him while his breathing got shallower. That's when the knocking started. It was soft, almost polite at first. The son and I looked at each other. He'd locked everything, checked twice. The knocking came again, even louder. Then I heard a voice. Mijo. A woman's voice called, sweet and elderly. Mijo, let me in. I'm cold. The son's face went white. That's my mother's voice. Mr. V's eyes shot open. He gripped my arm with surprising strength and pulled me close. Don't let her in, he whispered. It's not her. I've been telling it no for weeks, but it's desperate. The knocking moved to the windows, and I swear the voice seemed to change. It sounded like Mr. V's wife, then sometimes like a voice I didn't recognize. And once, I know it sounds crazy, but this story's crazy already. I swear it sounded like my grandmother. She had died when I was 12. Open the door, honey. I've missed you. It said in that voice, and I swear it was talking to me. The son was crying with hands over his ears, and Mr. V was fading, but still fighting, still trying to warn us. Then there was silence, complete silence. Even the wind had stopped. We waited 5 minutes, then 10, and finally the sun peered out the front window. "It's gone," he whispered. But I knew better. In hospice, you learn to feel when death enters a room. The air changes, gets heavier around you, and something had definitely entered. At least it felt that way to me. Mr. V's breathing hitched. His eyes went wide, looking at something behind me. I turned, but there was nothing there, but the room was colder. Mr. V died at 3:17 a.m. Peaceful, I think, in the end. The son and I did the necessary calls, waited for the funeral home. As they were loading Mr. V's body, one of the workers paused. "Ma'am, is your dog okay?" I looked where he was pointing. At the fence line, that mange-ridden coyote sat watching. But now there were two of them, identical, with the same patches of missing fur at the same spots, that same unnatural motionlessness. The second one turned its head toward me, opened its mouth as if to speak to me, but nothing came out. Then the two of them trotted back off into the desert. I finished my shift, documented everything properly, attended the funeral, did my job, but I started to pay attention after that. Started noticing how many of my patients mentioned visitors, dead relatives at windows, familiar voices calling from outside. Always at night, always wanting in. I started only working days after that, because something happened. 3 weeks ago, my mother called me at 2 a.m. My dead mother. The voice was perfect, too. Told me she was outside, forgot her key, asking if I could buzz her in. I didn't answer, didn't move, just lay there listening to my dead mother's voice on the phone, asking to come in. I no longer do home visits anymore, and I don't answer the door after dark. For anyone. Followed by something. From Doug Flitt. First time I saw the dog was my 3rd week working the Permian Basin. A little yellow thing, like a lab mix maybe, sitting not far off from well 47 while I was checking the pump jack. Looked skinny but not starving. Just watched me work. When you work out in the oil field, you might see a stray dog here and there. Dogs that wander off from farms or get dumped by douches who drive out, thinking the desert's a good place to abandon an innocent creature. Most don't last long, what with coyotes or heat, no water. This one looked like it had been out here for a while, though, but was managing to hang in there. I tossed half my sandwich toward it, landed about halfway between us. The dog didn't move, but kept watching. I finished my rounds, got back in the truck, and when I looked back, the sandwich was gone and so was the dog. I saw it again 2 days later at well 15. Same yellow dog, same distance away, same patient watching. This time I had some beef jerky on me. I threw a piece. The dog waited until I'd moved back to the truck before creeping forward to get it. It moved funny in a way, though. Real careful-like, as if its feet hurt. Probably full of cactus spines, poor thing. "You following me, buddy?" I asked out loud. Stupid, talking to a dog that far away. But when you're doing rounds alone for 12 hours, you talk to anything. The pump jacks, the tumbleweeds, yourself. By the 2nd week, it was routine. I'd pull up to a site, and somewhere in my peripheral, there'd be that yellow shape. Always the same distance, and watching. I started to pack extra food for the little guy. The dog never came closer, but the food always disappeared whenever I wasn't looking. "Got yourself a friend?" Danny asked one night at a shift change. He'd seen me tossing food out by well 23. "Stray dog. Been following my rounds." "Better be careful. Farmers out here will shoot the strays. They go after the calves sometimes." But this didn't look like the kind of dog that went after anything. Too careful and too observant. That's the word that kept coming to mind, like it was curious about how I lived my life and did my work. Week 3, something was different. I pulled up to well 8 around 2 a.m. That's the furthest one out. Takes about 40 minutes on dirt roads to reach. There were no lights except what's on the site, and whatever visibility or lack thereof the moon provides. I just remember visibility that night being absolute crap beyond the work lights. The dog was already there, sitting closer than usual. I'm talking about half the distance he usually was. In those LED floodlights, which is real harsh light, I could see it much clearer. It had some lab in it for sure, but it was mixed with something else. Overall, its body was a bit off. Its legs were a little longer than a dog should be. Body too short, maybe. Hard to tell with it sitting like that. I went through my routine, checking the gauges and logging the numbers. I listened to the pump's rhythm for any problems. The whole time, I could feel it watching me. When I threw over some jerky, it didn't wait for me to back away this time. It walked right up and took it. It was that careful, cautious walk again. But I could see now it didn't seem to be pain making it move that way. No, it seemed like it wanted to move that way. Like each step had to be planned out first, before actually moving. "Getting braver, huh?" I said. It looked at me, right in the eyes. It stared for a while. Its eyes caught the light in a weird way. It didn't have the usual green shine, these were more amber, nearly a red color. I finished up and headed back to the truck. In the side mirror, I watched the dog stand up to leave. Still, it seemed weird the way it moved. It didn't push up with its front legs like dogs do. It sort of unfolded. Back legs first, then straightened up. Front legs last. For just a second, it was almost vertical, before dropping back to all fours. Made me think of my daughter doing cartwheels. That moment where she straight up and down. Except this wasn't playful. It was kind of robotic. After that, I started to pay more attention to it. The dog was always there, but never on my drive between sites. I'd leave one well, drive 15 minutes of empty desert, arrive at the next site, and eventually, it would show up, following me. "Why me, bud?" I asked it one night. There was one night where I left one site and went to another, and I swear to you, it was there at the next site. I remember thinking, how in the heck did it beat me here? We were at well 19, and I'd hauled tail from the previous site. Couldn't remember why I was in a hurry, but I was. And there was that yellow dog sitting patiently. You'd think I'd get creeped out, but I decided to start leaving him more food. Whole sandwiches, leftover barbecue from dinner. It would walk up now, take the food while I watched. That weird, careful gait every time. And the size was strange too. I'd thought it was a lab mix, right? Maybe 60 pounds. But up close it appeared bigger, in a longer sort of way. The yellow fur was patchy in places, showing some darker skin underneath. Danny mentioned it again at shift change. "Your dog friend still hanging about?" "Yeah, and the weird thing is it shows up at every site." He laughed at me. "Probably knows your route by now. Smart dogs can figure out those patterns. I had one that knew exactly when lunch break was one time. Was always there ready for a piece of something." I didn't say it to him, but this didn't feel like that. The sites were spread over 40 square miles. No way a dog was covering that ground that fast. I decided to test it once. I broke my pattern, and I hit the wells in a random order. But it didn't matter. The yellow dog would find me and follow me to the next. Was its sense of smell that good? Its sense of hearing? Can dogs smell you from dozens of miles away? And even if they could they cover dozens of miles before I got my work done at a specific well? It didn't make sense. At week 5, I was at well 30. the one with the bad H2S sensor that always needed adjusting. Pain in the rear job that required both hands and concentration. I was elbow deep in the control panel when I heard breathing behind me. No, this wasn't the panting of a dog. This was slow, deep human breaths. I turned around so fast when I heard that. Rather than a stranger or a coworker, what I saw was the dog. Right there, just 5 feet away. Its spine sort of arched. And that close, at that angle, I swear to God, its eyes seemed human. And not human-like, but like a person's eyes detached from him and placed into a dog's skull. Brown irises and white sclera, looking right at me with intelligence that made my skin crawl. We stared each other down for several seconds. Eventually, it just turned and walked away. As I watched it do so, an involuntary and disturbing thought popped into my head. It walked like something pretending to be a dog. I called in sick the next 2 shifts. Needed some time to think, to rationalize things. Maybe I'd been working too many nights, seeing things. Maybe carbon monoxide from the generators caused some hallucinations or paranoia. Yeah, that made sense. But when I came back, the dog was waiting at the first site, sitting at the usual spot. It looked at me with those human eyes, and I knew I had not imagined anything. I stopped bringing food. It didn't seem to care. It still showed up, still watched. The worst part was the silence. A typical dog makes noise. They pant, they whine, they bark. They run up to you and want to be petted, or they lick you. This thing was absolutely silent, just breathing and watching. I even started to carry a tire iron in my belt. Not that I thought it would help, but the weight of it was reassuring. I think the dog noticed. I mean, I know it did. Its eyes tracked to the weapon, then back to my face. It seemed amused. Week 7, I was at well 8 again. The isolated one, 3 a.m. The dog was closer than ever, just sitting there in the work lights next to me. I was trying to ignore it, focusing on the gauges, when it made a sound from its throat that was almost words. It wasn't words exactly, but it sounded like someone trying to talk without moving their lips. Low and deep, with the rhythm of speech. I backed up toward the truck, hand on the tire iron. The dog watched me go. And then, it did something you're not gonna believe. Something that has disturbed me ever since. It stood up on 2 legs. Not like a dog doing a trick. Not like a dog trying to be cute. But like a man getting up from a couch. The front legs hung down, too long now that I could see them properly. They had joints that didn't match a dog's. The yellow fur was just patches like a costume falling apart. Underneath was skin, dark and grayish and mottled. It stood there, about 6 feet tall at full height, looking at me with human eyes and a face that was stretched all wrong. It still had a shape vaguely like a dog's head, but this was no dog. It made that sound again, like it was trying to speak. The not quite words noise. Its mouth moved strange. It sure had a lot of teeth in its mouth. And as I stared, I swear I heard my name. I ran then. Didn't try to play it cool. I sprinted back for the truck and dove inside, locking the doors. I started it and floored it, kicking up a dust cloud. I looked in the side mirror, saw it standing there in the work lights, before suddenly dropping down to all 4s and loping after me. It was fast, so much faster than it had ever moved before, terrifyingly so. It kept pace with the truck on the rough road. I was hitting 40, maybe 45 real quick. Dangerous speeds on that kind of terrain. It stayed right with me, running alongside. Not like a dog either. The spine was flexing too much, and limbs too long. After about a mile, it veered off into the shadows. I didn't slow down until I hit pavement. I finished my shift, but I didn't go to any sites that weren't close to the highway. I kept my doors locked, engine running, but the dog didn't show up at those. It liked those isolated spots, the one where no one could hear you. I asked to be reassigned somewhere else. I was scheduled to do so. At my last shift change there, Danny asked about my dog friend. Haven't seen it, I lied. Oh, well, probably found someone else to mooch food off of. Yeah, probably. I've never seen it again. This is the only scary supernatural thing that I hope ever happens to me. Stories like this are fun to listen to, but to live through it, heck no. A story from a storm chaser. From Anonymous. Graduate school does not pay much. I was offered $2,000 plus expenses to collect storm data across the Four Corners region. That was a lot of money to me back then, so I jumped at it. I would be deploying weather monitoring equipment ahead of storm systems and collecting data, then retrieving said equipment. It would be for 6 weeks, May through June, peak severe weather season. I had done storm research before, but always with a team. This would be solo work. Just me, a beat-up Nissan Pathfinder loaded with equipment, and 1,500 miles of high desert to cover. The loneliness didn't bother me. After a few years of shared grad student housing, the solitude sounded like a relief. The first 2 weeks went smooth. I'd check the forecast models each morning, identify promising storm developments, drive up and set out my equipment. Portable weather stations, hail pads, lightning detectors. Leave them for the storm to pass over, come back later to collect the data. Most nights I'd camp near the equipment to save on motel costs. Had a good setup. 2-person tent, camp stove, sleeping bag rated for cold desert nights. About a month into it, I noticed something off. I was camped near Shiprock, that massive volcanic formation that juts up from the desert. A storm was building up in the west, anvil head spreading across the sky like spilled ink. I deployed 3 weather stations in its projected path. Around 10 p.m., the lightning started. Not rain yet, just lightning. The desert lit up in snapshots. Flash of white, darkness, flash of white. Repeat. In one of those flashes, though, I saw something moving across the mesa, about a quarter mile out. A quick glimpse, but it looked like a person. Someone running in a way that suggested they were deeply out of breath. Another flash. They were a couple of football fields out now. Definitely human-shaped, but moving on all fours this time. Faster. Then there was darkness. I waited for the next flash, hand on my camp knife. Nothing. 10 seconds, 20. Thunder rolled across the desert. Finally, another flash. Empty mesa. Whatever it was had vanished. I barely slept that night. Kept the tent flaps open despite the rain that eventually came. Just keeping an eye out. Nothing else happened that night. In the morning, I found tracks in the mud near my camp. They started as handprints and footprints, like someone crawling around. But they gradually changed. The fingers got longer, the palm wider. By the time the tracks reached the sagebrush and disappeared, they looked more like coyote prints, but not quite. 2 nights later, camping near Mexican Hat, it happened again. Different storm. Same figure during lightning flashes. Something pale moving across the rocks. Bipedal in one flash, then all fours in the next, covering impossible amounts of ground between strikes. This time it circled my camp. I could track its movement by the pattern. North in one flash, east in the next, south, west. What was it doing? What even was it? I started sleeping in my Pathfinder after that. If you'd asked me out loud, I would have said, because of the storms, but really, it was the feeling of being surrounded by metal and locked doors away from something else out there. The thing is, you can see some odd things when you chase storms. When you're sleep-deprived or full of adrenaline, when the lighting is strange, or there's electrical charges in the air, it all messes with your perception. I've seen ball lightning that looked like UFOs, or dust devils that seemed to chase cars. This was probably just another desert oddity, a trick of the light, maybe someone's dog, distorted by distance and darkness. But then came Colorado. I was monitoring a supercell near the Ute Mountain Reservation. A beautiful storm, rotating updraft with well-defined wall cloud. I'd set up 5 stations in a line, hoping to catch wind speed gradients. I made camp on a small rise where I could watch the storm develop. The scanner crackled with weather service warnings. Tornado watch, hail likely, dangerous lightning, the usual. I was in the tent with my laptop open, watching radar feeds, when I heard someone say my name. What would you do in that situation when you're supposed to be alone in the wild and you hear your name called? It was also clear as day. No whisper or chance that it was a hallucination this time. Someone called my name from right outside. Sounded like someone with a sore throat. I froze on the spot. No one knew I was here. This wasn't a campground or even a real road, just a dirt track, miles from anywhere. A stranger, of all things, might walk up on me. But how would they know my name?
Anonymous, come out.
It was really close, and I realized what was so wrong with that voice. It wasn't coming from one direction. It was moving around the tent quickly as it spoke. Too fast, like someone running in circles around my camp, maintaining a conversation.
Come out. Storm. Dangerous.
Lightning flashed. In that split second of white light, I saw the shadow on the tent wall. Human-shaped but malnourished, even with just the silhouette of the thing. I could make out bones protruding from under the skin, and it was pressed right against the fabric. I grabbed my knife, unzipping the tent fly in one motion, and I burst out. In that brief moment, it had gone, because there was no one outside. But this smell hit me right away, like dead and wet dog mixed with electricity. There was another flash. There, crouched behind a nearby boulder, pale skin stretched over a frame that didn't fit it, like a living taxidermied human, not a man. Its face was almost normal. Would have passed for human in daylight at a distance, but the eyes reflected the lightning more like an animal's, and the mouth opened too wide when it spoke. It said,
Storm. Dangerous. Come.
It gestured toward the desert with its Pinocchio-like arm, beckoning and patient. It wanted me to follow it, to walk away from my camp, to walk into the darkness. No thanks. I ran for the Pathfinder, and it moved the instant I began to run. It ran from the boulder, coming at me on all fours. How fast it was scared the living daylights out of me. I've seen animals in the desert, coyotes, javelinas, even a mountain lion once. Nothing moved like this. It flowed across the ground, limbs working in perfect motion despite the way they were shaped, despite the lack of muscle. I made it to the SUV, diving right through the driver door. I instantly heard something hit the passenger side door the moment I got in. It was hard enough to rock the vehicle. Then there was silence. I started the engine and flipped on the headlights. There was something standing in front of the Pathfinder. Upright, nude, pale skin showing a network of scars, maybe natural markings. Hard to tell. It tilted its head at me, studying. Then it smiled, and it beckoned me, calm, like it was a friend of mine. That really freaked me out. Lightning struck nearby, maybe 50 yards. The thunder was instant and deafening. In the afterimage, I saw it drop back onto all fours. It came at the vehicle again, this time from the side, hitting the driver's side door. The window cracked, but held. I threw it in reverse and floored it. But I hit a rock, bouncing and nearly losing control. I used the momentum to spin the wheel, get the SUV pointed toward the dirt track. I floored it again. 30 miles per hour, 40, then 50. In the mirrors, lit by lightning and my taillights, I saw brief movements of something. But the storm hit properly then. Rain so heavy the wipers couldn't keep up. Hail pounded my roof and the wind tried to push me off the road. I kept the accelerator down though, wrestling the wheel, praying I wouldn't flip, just imagining being stranded out here with that thing. That thought kept me going. I eventually hit pavement, then drove another hour to the nearest town. I pulled into a truck stop, and I parked under the brightest lights I could find. I sat there until sunrise with the engine running and the doors locked. When the sun finally came up, I got out to check the damage. Both sides were dented to heck. The window was spiderwebbed, and on the roof, pressed into the metal like a brand, were handprints. I drove straight back to the university, asked for a week to gather my thoughts before I had to go out again. And amazingly, they allowed it. For the remainder of my field research, I had no issues. But to this day, I've got a renewed fear of the dark. Night Shift Storytelling from Randolph. I work nights at a convenience store off Highway 89, about 30 miles from the res. I've been here for 4 years, and my grandmother keeps saying I'm asking for trouble, working alone in the dark like that. She's probably right. She's a smart woman. But the pay's decent, and I need to finish my nursing degree somehow. Well, truth be told, you see things on that shift. That's just how it is. Most of it you can explain away. Drunks and tweakers or kids being stupid. But there are some things you just learn to live with. Things you don't talk about. Don't think about them too hard, and definitely don't name them. Let me tell you about a few incidents. Not the worst one. I'm still working up to that. Just the regular strange stuff that happens when you're the only lit-up building for miles of empty highway. There's this woman who comes in maybe once a month, always around 3 a.m., parks right up front, but I never hear her car pull up. She buys the same thing every time, a bottle of water and those little wax candy bottles. She pays an exact change, old bills like from the 80s, and she smells like sage and something else, maybe like sweet rot. And she never says a word, just nods when I give her the receipt. One night I was restocking when she came in. I heard the door chime and looked up, and she was already at the counter. I hurried over and she was just standing there, facing the cigarette display. Not moving, not breathing that I could see. She was just standing. I came around the counter and she turned. Like instantly too, like a bird, and she stared at me. Her pupils were huge, almost no iris. She set her water and candy on the counter, exact change already laid out, and left. Never saw her blink. Not once. Then there's the hitchhiker problem. People see them all along this stretch of 89, always at night, always walking north. But here's the thing, they're walking backward, facing traffic and walking backward. Truckers hate this stretch because of that. They'll see someone, slow down to check if they need help, and the person will turn around, and their face will be unfinished. Like someone started making a face out of clay and stopped halfway through, their features missing in spots. I had a trucker come in once, shaking so bad he could barely hold his coffee. He said one of them got in his cab. He had stopped to check his load, left the passenger door unlocked. He got back in and started to drive, and realized someone was sitting in the sleeper berth. He could see them in the mirror. Something with long hair and a thin neck. He drove straight here with that thing in his truck, trying to pretend he didn't see it. He parked under our lights and ran inside, leaving the door open, like you would a bear if they'd gotten inside your vehicle. We called the highway patrol. When they checked, the cab was empty, but there were handprints on the inside of the windows, small ones, like a child's. The store itself has issues too. The freezer in the back. Sometimes I'll be doing inventory and hear someone walking in there with me. Vividly, footsteps on the metal floor. But I'm always alone. The walk-in door is locked from the outside. No other way in or out. I just keep counting, pretending I don't hear it. It usually stops after a few minutes. Worse is when customers hear things. Had a lady ask me once, who was crying in our bathroom? Told her no one. Bathroom is empty. She insisted someone was in there, crying like their heart had been broken. Made me check too. But it was empty, like I knew it would be. When I came out, the lady had gone pale. Said the crying had stopped the second I walked through the door. She said it sounded like it was coming from inside the walls after that. We get a lot of almost customers too. People who pull up, sit in their cars for 5 or 10 minutes, then leave without coming in. During day shift, whatever, people change their minds. But at night, they'll sit there with their lights off. I'll see the cherry of a cigarette, maybe a face lit by a phone screen. Then they're gone. One regular does this, an older man in a pickup. Parks in the same spot, far corner of the lot. Sits for exactly 13 minutes. I've timed it. Then leaves. Every Thursday around 2:30 a.m. Been doing it for 2 years. Never comes in, never acknowledges me when I wave. Just sits and waits and leaves. I eventually asked my manager about him. She went quiet. Then she said he used to work here. Night shift like me. Until one night, while he was working, someone else walked in. Someone who looked exactly like him. Same face, clothes, name tag, an exact copy of him. This duplicate just started walking alongside him like it was normal, straightening shelves and checking receipts. The real one ran out of the building, never came back to work, but he still comes and sits in the lot. They think he's keeping an eye on things, wondering if he might see the duplicate again, or someone else's. Maybe he's making sure it's really me in here, and not something else wearing my face. That brings me to the worst thing, the thing I don't like to think about. One winter, during that bad cold snap not too long ago, it was a dead quiet night, and no customers were had for hours. Just me listening to a weather report about more snow. Around 4 a.m., a man came in, Navajo like me, but old-fashioned. He was wearing jeans and boots and a flannel shirt. Normal enough, right? But he moved like a zombie, like either or both of his legs might give out from under him at any moment. He bought coffee, bandages, and pretzels. When he paid, I noticed his hands were torn up real bad. Deep scratches, maybe from barbed wire or thorns, I thought. Rough night? I asked him. He looked at me for a long moment, really looked, like he was measuring something. Then he leaned in close, and I could smell copper on him. Was that blood? It followed me from Chaco Canyon. 3 days now. It learned my face. He whispered to me. I knew better than to ask what it was. Some knowledge is dangerous to have, but he kept talking, voice urgent. If someone comes in looking like me, exactly like me, don't serve them. Don't speak to them, lock the doors, and wait for the sun to rise. He left after that. I watched him drive away, his old truck struggling in that snow. I thought I'd never see him again. I thought he was just another desert crazy, touched by too much solitude, and maybe heat stroke. But 20 minutes later, he came back. That same truck, those same clothes, even parked in the exact same spot. But when he walked in, something was different. He moved perfectly. No zombie-like motion. No injured movement. He bought the same items too. Coffee, bandages, and pretzels. He set them on the counter in the same order, but when he reached for his wallet, I saw his hands. They were untouched, just smooth, unmarked skin. I rang him up without speaking, took his money, different bills than the first time, gave him change, and he smiled. And that's when I knew for sure. That first man's teeth had been crooked, his left canine chipped. This one's teeth were straight, perfect, like they'd been fixed. Cold night, it said with his voice. I nodded. I couldn't speak, and I couldn't move. It leaned in, same as the real one had, and I smelled that copper smell. But underneath it was something else, that sweet rot smell I'd noticed on other things. And when it whispered, I felt the words more than I heard them. He tasted like coffee and fear. Then it left. Same truck starting up and same taillights disappearing into the snow. I locked the doors, turned off the pumps, and sat in the back office until my manager came in at 6. I told her I was sick. I went home and burned sage until my apartment reeked of it. Then I called my grandmother and asked her for protection prayers. She knew without me saying anything. You saw one, she said. Yeah. She stopped. We don't say the word, especially not those of us who know better. The bad thing. It's getting bold, showing itself in town now. I work nights still. I still do see the occasional strange thing, or I hear about them from customers or coworkers. But I like to keep salt in my pockets now. I wear the turquoise my grandmother blessed, and now I know the difference between the strange but harmless things and the thing that wears faces. Skinwalker on the Chain Gang, from Anon. I did 4 months in San Juan County detention for a DUI and resisting. This is something I'm not proud of, but it's what happened. The judge gave me work release after the first month. Road crew detail. They called it community service labor, but everyone just called it chain gang, even though we didn't wear chains anymore. 5 days a week, they'd wake us up at 4 a.m., load us on the bus by 4:30, and have us out on the highways by 5. We'd be picking up trash and clearing tumbleweeds and patching potholes, whatever needed doing. 8 of us usually, plus 2 deputies, usually Deputy M and Deputy C. The deputies always carried shotguns, and they always treated us like murderers instead of drunk drivers and check bouncers. Real humanizing, sarcasm. The work wasn't bad, way better than sitting in a cell, and being outside helped, even if it was just the shoulders of Highway 64 stretching through the desert. We would work until noon and get box lunches, then back to the jail by 2. Shower, dinner, then lockdown. Same thing next day. Around late September, things got strange. We were working a stretch of road near the Carson National Forest boundary, a remote area. Maybe 2 cars passed by the whole morning. Deputy C kept complaining about this being a waste of resources, sending us that far out for a few beer cans and a dead possum. The first incident was small. A guy named Majors, doing 6 months for assault, stopped dead in the middle of picking up trash. Just froze, staring at the tree line. The rest of us kept working but watched him. He learned to pay attention when someone acted different. It could mean trouble coming. "The trees are moving," he said. Deputy M told him to shut up and get back to work, but I looked where Majors was staring. A tiny bit of sunlight was starting to filter through, making shadows. And yeah, something was moving in there. I was thinking it was a person moving parallel to us, just inside the trees. And whoever it was definitely tall. On occasion, it would look like they were crawling around, then would be back up on 2 legs. Just a deer," said Deputy C, but his hand moved to the shotgun anyway. We kept on working, but everyone was watching the trees now. That thing, whatever it was, kept pacing around. When we moved up the road, it moved too. After about 10 minutes, it was finally gone. Majors wouldn't shut up about it on the ride back. Kept saying it wasn't anything natural, the way it moved. Said it reminded him of his grandma's stories. He was Hikaria Apache, and had grown up hearing about things in the forest. Deputy C told him to can it, or else. But I knew what Majors meant. My family's from Farmington, Navajo on my mother's side. I'd heard stories too about the Yinotlushi, skinwalkers, witches who could take animal form, outrun any man, things that hunted people for sport or worse. The next morning, we were on the same stretch of road. Deputy C was teed off about it, to say the least. Said we had already cleaned that section, but the work order was the work order. We started before dawn this time, working by the headlights of the transport bus. A guy named Yazzie was on the crew, a good kid who had just turned 18, doing 3 months for stealing cars, but otherwise good. He was nervous from the start, kept looking at the forest. His family was traditional. He wore a little medicine pouch his grandfather had made, even though it was technically contraband. Even these deputies let it slide. We'd been working maybe an hour when we smelt the worst crap, like every roadkill you've ever found combined into one monstrous thing. It rolled in from the forest on the morning breeze and made all of us gag. And then we saw it clearly for the first time. A ways up the road from us, something came out of the trees. At first it looked like a huge wolf, with gray-black fur moving low to the ground. But as it got closer to the road, it stood up. Smooth transition like smoke rising. It was on 2 legs, standing at about 7 feet tall. Still wolf-shaped in the head and chest, but the arms were quite long. It was covered in fur. It stood in the middle of Highway 64 and looked right at us. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Even the deputies froze. We were all thinking the same thing, that this couldn't be real. Then we saw it snarl, the skin on its face shifting, but it looked more like bones under the fur moving around. Yazzie was whispering something like a prayer. Maybe he was just cursing in another language. Then the thing sort of growled, and my first thought was that it sounded like a man trying to growl like an animal. Was this a guy in a werewolf suit? Did he want to get shot by deputies? That was enough to break our spell. Everyone started to scream and scrambled for the bus. 8 grown men pushing and shoving to get away from that thing over there. Deputy C was yelling for order, but his voice cracked, and Deputy M had his shotgun up, but his hands were shaking too bad to aim. All the while, that thing was still out there just standing still, probably watching us panic. When it got back down on all 4s, it started to run towards us. I remember Deputy C screaming, "Get on the freaking bus!" We didn't need to be told twice. We crammed through the door, falling over each other. Tommy was last, and the thing almost got him. It came close enough that we could see details. The fur wasn't uniform. There were patches of human skin showing through. One ear was human, the other looked wolf-like. Whatever it was, it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Deputy M slammed the door shut just as it reached the bus. Then the thing stood up, face level at the windows, and this close, I could see eyes, bloodshot and ready for meat. Then I heard Deputy C say, "Drive," to the bus driver. Fast. In moments, the engine was grinding. The thing walked along the side of the bus, trying to keep pace, running its hands along the windows. When it got to the back, it gripped the emergency door handle and tested it. That was creepy. But the engine was roaring now, and we were flying down the road. We did about 30 miles before anyone spoke. Yazzie was crying and Majors was praying in Apache. I swear one of the other guys pissed himself. Deputy C was on the radio trying to explain to dispatch what happened without sounding insane. They didn't send us back out for 3 days. When we did go back out, it was a different stretch of road, closer to town, daylight hours only. And not long after that, my time was up. Thank God. Skinwalkers are a staple to the horror story diet. And now consider yourself satiated. Not like those skinwalkers, though. Those guys are ravenous for terror. Good night. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tales from the Break Room. I'm your host, Darkness Prevails. Find me on X at Dark Prevails. Order my new book, Creepy Campfire Stories, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your favorite bookstore, or go to creepycampfirestories.com. Follow and review Tales from the Break Room on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And of course, send us your scary work stories at eeriecast.com/submit. Thank you. Well, it's time for me to clock out. It's been a long day, and I'd rather hit the sack before the skinwalkers start roaming.